From Ruben Amorim's appointment to his sacking, he and Manchester United made 3 vital mistakes. Out of the Carabao Cup, out of the FA Cup, and Michael Carrick is the new interim manager. Flex and Nathan Sold have had their say on who they think should be the next new manager, and also have their ideas on how to save the club. But before we do that, let's think about Ruben Amorim's appointment and the thoughts at the time. So he officially signed for Manchester United on the 11th of November 2024. Nathan, was he their first choice originally?
Look, Omar Barada really liked Ruben Amorim. You know, he made it his mission, basically, to go out to Portugal, convince him to come. And they didn't really think that Ruben Amorim was potentially an option because Erik ten Hag's gone. You have to remember that they flirted with every manager around in the summer. Thomas Tuchel had talks with Sir Jim Ratcliffe in Monaco. Thomas Frank before he got the Tottenham job. Maurizio Pochettino now with the US. So they really did a lot of due diligence and yet came away thinking Ruben Amorim has an idea that we like and we need a manager with principles, and obviously we'll get all the way through to the end. It didn't quite work out like that, but definitely they were very, very keen and smitten with Ruben Amorim.
Because he started mid-season, but he didn't want to at first. Why was that?
Yeah, look, he built what he felt was a title-winning squad at Sporting. So for him, why would he not want to see it through? And also, he knew how complicated the system was. He's never shied away from the fact that it's very, very difficult to get those ideas across, particularly when Man United were playing Thursday, Sunday, limited training sessions, days off, recovery, and he knew that. I'm not going to have much time with these players. I would rather come in the summer, get a full pre-season to get through it all.
So Flex, as a United fan, how optimistic were you when he brought in? I mean, let's not forget, this is a team that just beat Manchester City comprehensively in the Champions League. Sporting Lisbon flying. How did you feel at the time?
Yeah, I mean, you're in that cycle as a Man United fan when you've got the hope and expectations and the optimism at the beginning of every appointment. That's what we do. We do rinse and repeat. So, seeing what he was doing at Sporting and seeing how dominant his team was, seeing the 3-4-3, naively, hindsight is a wonderful thing. But I was very optimistic. I can't lie about that. I was excited. I liked the fact that, okay, he was given that ultimatum to, it's now or never was the line, wasn't it? From Omar Barada and co. And he said, well, this is a big shot. It's got to be now then. So that's someone who really wants to be there. I'm a bit of a sucker for the way someone comes across as well. And he charmed me, he wooed me, wearing great clothes, great hair, you know, fantastic speaker. Then he started talking about the plans and how the game's going to go and we're going to have to suffer and this, that and the other. So I'm lapping it all up, if I'm honest. I'm all in.
I mean, it's funny you should say that because at the beginning, doing a bit of research, between December and 6 months later, he'd had 491 interviews.
Yeah,
I mean, that must have been more than he'd done at any other point in his life, but you like the way he communicated with the fans.
He communicated really, really well. And it was something that we're not really used to as United fans. Somebody, you know, and there's a complete polar opposite and contrast to what Erik ten Hag was, especially towards the end of Erik ten Hag, but even during ten Hag's better periods, the way he communicates, they couldn't be two opposite men, could they? Amorim and Erik ten Hag, by just the character of the men. So it was quite refreshing to see how he was, but then you could see quite early that, oh, we've got quite an emotional character here. He's making a lot of mistakes. He's saying things that maybe he shouldn't say. He's too honest. And, you know, by his own admission, he used to say those things.
For you, Nathan, then, as someone that's in there in his press conferences, what was your introduction to him like? What did you think of him at the beginning?
Very charismatic, like Flex said. You know, you had that really kind of cold demeanour that often you get from Dutch managers, and that was Ten Hag. And you know, I did find Ten Hag quite nice to deal with. He was polite, but he wasn't going to go over the top. Wasn't going to charm anyone in the room. And Ruben Amorim, he draw parallels to Jose Mourinho, and you know they were very close. Obviously, Amorim came to Manchester United when he was learning, and came as a bit of an apprentice, and got to speak to Jose. So easy parallels to draw. But I think you're right. I mean, people might scoff at just the way he carries himself, the clothes, the way he speaks. It does mean something, and I will say that we're going to go down the line and chart this, but Manchester United need a manager that can deal with all these interviews. A lot of managers think they can until they've got to do 491 interviews through the first 6 months. And by the end, say 800. You know, it's not what you're getting at Palace, Fulham, Bournemouth. It's different. And he dealt with that really well.
Because there was a little bit of a division in the hierarchy over who they went for and when they went for him. But he did come in. What was his relationship like with INEOS at the beginning, in those first few weeks and months?
I mean, they liked him. There'll be a lot of revisionism now that maybe, oh, well, we weren't so keen on him. Yes, you were. You were keen on him, you liked his idea, you basically begged him to come. It's now or never. It was now or never for Man United, they felt, to get him really as well, because he was on the ascendancy. Remember, Hugo Viana had gone to Manchester City. I definitely believe that there was a feeling that he wouldn't, or he could potentially end up at Manchester City post Pep Guardiola had he never gone, had he just kept winning at Sporting. I firmly believe that Viana would have at least had him in the mix, and that was definitely, I think, on Manchester United's mind. They get him in, and what you're seeing now is, I don't think, something that tallies with the truth at the beginning. They loved his idea, they loved what he was about, they loved his aura, and they were charmed by him, and that's why they got him.
They spent a hell of a lot of money, £8.3 million in bringing him in, £900,000 then to start work early. I mean, you must be thinking this is a man that they really want, and it can then take us forward.
It shows ultimate backing, doesn't it? Like Nathan's saying, it shows that is your guy, that is the one you're going after, you're giving him an ultimatum, and not only are you doing that, you're fronting up the money to make it happen. So there can't be any discrepancies as to whether they did or didn't want this manager. Like that's just, it just can't be said, because the proof is in the pudding. We've seen the evidence to suggest on his way in that they really, really wanted him. And what we've gone on to see in the earlier days of Ruben, and in the middle period where it was quite tough, we've seen the hierarchy or the footballing department put it out there in big interviews. We've seen Sir Jim's backing of Ruben Amorim saying, I want to give this manager 3 years. We've seen Jason Wilcox on the Inside Carrington podcast and others sort of saying, we've got a vision, this is great. We know we don't have all the pieces to the puzzle. I'm paraphrasing here, but we don't have all the pieces to the puzzle, but we'll get there. We believe in this system. His system's a lot more adaptable than it may give off. All of these big quotes that have been thrown around, and then I know we're going forward a little bit, but so we've ended up here. So what my point is that they've waxed lyrical so many times at the point where even an attempt to sort of bring the heat off Ruben out of how much they believe in him. Because when Sir Jim Ratcliffe was talking about that 3 years, that was in an international break when it was quite tough. And he kind of just made the noise go away, as if to say, listen, you may think after game by game, we're going to sack this manager. We're not doing that. Right up into the last couple of weeks where Ruben was here, even Ruben himself was saying, just because players have gone to AFCON, just because we've got a couple of injuries, we won't panic. We won't commit the sins of the past. So that shows, seemingly, that they're all singing off the same hymn sheet, the choir is in sync, and they're all heading in the right direction. And then obviously, as we know, problems started to arise.
Yeah. I was just going to say, when I was at Crystal Palace, one of the really interesting things when you're waiting to see players walk past and you're seeing players chatting to agents, you're right next to the tunnel, and it's right next to the away dressing room. And I remember being stood there. You've got Bruno Fernandes' brother and Bruno Fernandes laughing and joking. We just beat Crystal Palace with Ruben Amorim, Cheshire Cat smiles, and there was Jason Wilcox coming through, keen to speak to journalists that day, actually, just kind of have a little natter, trust the process, that's what he said. And then he carried on. Yeah. And, that doesn't feel that long ago, Crystal Palace, when Mason Mount, and it's all looking good, and, trust in the process. They firmly believed. Yeah. Flex is saying the same as me, we're both singing off the same hymn sheet. They loved Ruben Amorim, loved everything he was about, and it's just unravelled far quicker than I think anyone could have predicted.
Well, one of the key times that did unravel, as we all will remember, was at Grimsby. We'll move on to Grimsby, but that was just the tip of the iceberg with signs that the system wasn't quite working for the squad. Nathan, for you, with the system, we know the 3-4-3 is what he wanted to implement, and he was always going to implement it. But for the players who weren't used to this system, how big a tactical shock was it?
I think the expectation is, these are professional players, why is it taking so long to understand the system? If you're playing, say, as a right number 10, and then you suddenly play as a left number 10 and you can't function, or you're a left winger and you can't play inside, it's quite difficult for fans to grasp that. But, Ruben Amorim was telling us that, hang on a minute, I'm having to walk players, I'm physically dragging players into positions on the training pitch. These are not little kids, these are professional footballers at one of the biggest clubs, not the biggest club in the world, and yet you're dragging them into a position. That was sounding alarm bells for a lot of people, and not just because of the system. It was kind of, what players have we got here that can't actually function outside of
what players were they then?
Everyone. There was no one was specifically called out there, but it was kind of just like, look, Luke Shaw benefited immensely. Mason Mount's played the system before, but others, Amad Diallo was a great success in the end, but had to be coached into being a right wing back. You're looking at Dorgu, who's played all over the shop recently, playing as a number 10. we've seen, Ugarte and Casemiro and Mainu barely played. So a lot of these players just couldn't get used to the positions.
At the time, he had Garnacho and Rashford. And he's trying to get those guys, especially Garnacho, to try and understand what that looks like.
But as a fan, though, because obviously with Eric Ten Hag, if someone says, what's Eric Ten Hag's way of playing at Manchester United? I mean, I don't know about you two, but I wouldn't have an answer for that. I wouldn't know. With Amorim, though, was at least that sort of excitement right at the beginning that maybe it doesn't work at first, but we can see a trajectory?
Well, that was out of hope. It wasn't out of evidence.
Yeah.
Because from the very, very first game against Ipswich, you could see what he was trying to do. And the first bit was the alarm bells of, okay, well, Casemiro can't go that high. Oh my God, look at Johnny Evans, he's got to jump. We don't want that. You're looking at Garnacho, back to goal in the half spaces, not his game. He needs to be high and wide facing the goal. So you saw all these sort of missed profiles, but obviously it's game one. Then it got into the next stages where we'd beaten, we'd got a 2-2 draw at Liverpool, and that was deemed as like our best performance.
Could have won it as well.
Could have won it in the end, right at the end with Harry Maguire. Then we also beat Manchester City, Ahmad in the last minute. But as we know how last season ended, there wasn't any real momentum. And actually, one of the biggest criticisms or significant things you look at with Amorim's tenure is there was zero new manager bounce. There was zero of anything to cling on to. When you had Ollie, and this isn't me saying bring these guys back, but Ollie initially, first 17 games, the interim, we're all singing Ollie at the wheel, we're going every stadium, and we can't believe it. It's transitional, it's fast, it's attacking, it's counter-attacking, and then we went on that great away winning streak. Yes, there were no fans because of COVID, but they went on that run. There was something you looked at. Eric Ten Hag brought trophies. Finished third in his first season, got to FA Cup final and lost, won the Carabao Cup. You're going, there's something. Amorim, it was just a constant battle, like Nathan was saying, for him to get players to understand, with him actually telling us after winning a game, I think after we beat Everton 4-0, I remember that game, he said, you guys think this is good? I'm telling you, the storm's coming. And then that was it. The storm never went until he left. So actually, we're still in the storm.
When did that novelty wear off then? Because you've mentioned before about quite liking his and the way that he carried himself. Because of what you're saying now, is there's nothing actually you could see. When at what point did you like now?
There were signs early last season, I would say. I'll be honest. I think as results, as we were getting so inconsistent in the league, again, you have to realign where you are. So that when the league became a write-off because we were losing every single game, the focus and the psyche behind that was, don't worry, we'll be okay, because what we're actually doing is, okay, the league's been a disaster, too much to change in a short space of time. We're in the Europa League, we'll win that, no problem. And then you see how that developed, even how he was against Lyon. I mean, I was there, amazing game, couldn't believe it, couldn't breathe, but we were 2-0 up. We were 2-0 up. They had a man sent off and then started winning the game. So all of those things carried through to this very season, to when Amorim got sacked. So I think for me, it was over really after Spurs, if I'm honest. Now, as a fan, emotionally, I didn't call for Ruben Amorim to leave because I thought, through gritted teeth, he's come halfway through the season. I want to give this manager a chance, get a full pre-season. We're clearly going to have one game a week. More time on the training field, doesn't have any of his players. All we got was 1.5 million Aiden Heaven, which is a snip, by the way, for how good he's been, and a young Patrick Dorgu from Lecce. Didn't really get invested into in the January transfer window. So let's give him time. But you look at the way we started this season, and it was shocking. So for me, there was really, as I look back, it should have been after Spurs.
Yeah, I agree. Bilbao was where you lost some of the moderates, some of the real fervent support for Ruben Amorim, because at that point, and I wrote recently, is Ruben Amorim, right before the sack, and I said, is he a stubborn genius or is he fatally flawed? And an elite manager, look, after Ten Hag, there was a huge appetite at Man United to have a manager, have a head coach, that's probably get onto that, but have someone who lives and dies by their system, like has a philosophy. You said you can't think of how Eric Ten Hag's team played. I know, it had a big hole in midfield. Yeah. That's how it worked. But no one really, he compromised his beliefs. Louis van Gaal previously had compromised his beliefs. Ralf Rangnick wanted to play 4-2-2-2. First game in, he was like, I can't play this. Ronaldo's not going to press for me. Ditch that. And you're just trying to survive as long as you can, and then ultimately it's not your vision, and you sort of go out. And with Ruben Amorim, at Grimsby, and people are sort of saying that was a horrendous result, and it is. It was a horrendous result. But at what point are players hiding, sort of cowardly hiding behind a system where those players out there should have beaten Grimsby? And I'm not dragging Grimsby. They're a League Two team. They're a good club, proper club. But you know, the players out there, you got Shesko, Ahmad, you know, even youngsters like Tyler Fredrickson played in the Premier League. You know, where's the personal pride? And everyone's looking at the dugout and a bloke with the tactics board. I was seeing people go against the manager then, and I don't think it's fair now as I didn't then.
Well, this takes us on very nicely to our next section, which is about mental fragility. Their weak mentality. I mean, this season United have lost 12 points from winning positions. That's a joint 5th in the league. But to be honest with you, I feel as though with Man United, we've heard it from Roy Keane for years now. You can't really put that just on Ruben Amorim, surely.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I think there seems to be this weird consensus that everything at Man United is Ruben Amorim's fault. Of course, it can't be. It can't be. It's never been any one said manager's fault. And it's never been a situation where we think that we're able to just, well, we shouldn't, change just one manager and everything will be fixed. The players are completely fragile. We used to say that under Oli, we used to say that under Jose, we used to say that under Erik ten Hag. And what you don't realise that there's all these kind of different squads actually being built. So this isn't the same thing as like Bailly, Rojo, off the top of my head now, Jesse Lingard, Martial, Matic, Herrera, Pogba, Lukaku. This isn't that team that threw the manager under us. This is now, it wasn't just gone with Erik ten Hag, where it's, you know, Anthony's come, not done well. It's not because he's gone. It's not Rasmus Højlund. It's not Scott McTominay. It's not Fred. It's not all these things. It's not Amrabat. So there is a constant situation which shows you that it's institutional with what's going on. Now, we're in a situation at Man United, I believe, where there's so many factors that can be true at once. And because so many things have gone wrong over such a sustained period, we as fans, and sometimes in the media as well, it's very difficult, and obviously clearly inside the club, it's very difficult to ascertain exactly what the root cause is, because there's so many factions of blame and so many things that are wrong. But on the players, time and time again, whether it's this squad, the Erik ten Hag squad, the one before that, the Oli one, whether it's the Ralf Rangnick one and they don't want to press, they don't want to do 4-2-2, it's always a version of players either downing tools and just not doing well enough, or not taking on the instructions and not being adaptable, not having the quality. And actually, this is one of the first times, actually, I'll be honest, the players didn't down tools for Ruben Amorim. I didn't feel like there was a lack of desire to do well. It came across in poor ability and mentality. You're letting goals slip, you're giving things away. But by and large, like, you know, look, for the XG guys and stuff, we're creating more chances, we're taking a lot more shots. Third highest scorers in the league just before Amorim got sacked, because there was £200 million worth of investment in that area. So that's where you expect to see the improvement. No improvement in midfield. And you see that, no improvement at the back with injury. So there were some contextual things you can look at from a footballing side to say, well, it wasn't completely all horrendous every single game, but they just failed, like I said, to ignite any sort of meaningful sort of energy, anything meaningful to take forward. It was missing. And then when the results get as bad as they were, it's indefensible.
And so, when things are going badly for United at this point, who on the pitch would be looked at to take them by the scruff of the neck?
Honestly, I'm so glad you asked me that, because Bruno Fernandes, I think, is one of the most disrespected footballers in the world. I think
the most overhated.
I think he is an incredible leader. And, obviously I'm privy to things behind the scenes as well, what he does for all the different age groups and the charities, and I get that, and people ultimately on a Saturday don't care about that. I fully understand that and grasp that. But on the pitch, you can never accuse him of not caring or not trying. Even in that Brighton game, he puts the ball and gets the assist for Sesko, but he's running around. Burnley, he sacrifices his own position to go out wide on the right so that Cunha can come inside, because Cunha's out of the game. He is, in my mind, irreplaceable. Maybe you replace him by committee, but he is one of the few that can handle the responsibility. A lot of those players, talking about mentality, it's a bit like Real Madrid and Barcelona for me. They're the only two clubs that are comparable, where every day, full newspapers in Spain are writing about these players, and we're seeing now, say, Trent gone from Liverpool, massive club, but you know, the scrutiny at Real Madrid is different. The scrutiny at Man United is different. You know, it's not a coincidence that Højlund goes to Napoli and does well, and Lukaku, and you know, all these players go, and it's like they shed skin almost. You know, they feel free, and they're not suddenly good players, not suddenly bad players. There are good footballers at Man United right now. But every defeat, and you've got to understand that Man United, the one thing that's different, the one thing I've realised covering them day in, day out is history it's on your shoulders, like clinging to you like a shadow. 99 and all these players in the media. Now, I understand that, you know, that is just part of life. You want to play for a big club, you want to get paid all the big money, but, you know, very few clubs are reminding you constantly of what was and what you need to be. And also understand that Amorim said this himself. Basically, Man United don't have the stomach for a rebuild. They don't. They're too big a club. Real Madrid, Barcelona, they don't rebuild. You just have to win all the time. And Man United, they haven't done that consistently for a long time, and it's difficult to ever accept that, you know, there's going to be a period of sustained sort of losses, really.
So it's so bad. Like, I'm so glad you say everything. People think you got a Bruno bias, or well, he led us to 15th. What's so great about that? We would have been relegated without Bruno Fernandes last season. He's the only person who gives any sort of consistency, and it's so true about what you say about the stuff off the field as well. When you see behind the scenes how he's spoken about at the club, how other players speak about him, and people see the arms up and this, that, and the other, but they don't see the level of consistency that his numbers can stand up above and next to all your favourite attacking midfielders, all your flavour of the months, all the guys who have got all the medals, all the guys playing in the good teams. You know, his job description is to score and create goals. It has been ever since he's come to Manchester United. And that's all he's done at a very, very high rate in one of the worst period of modern day Manchester United.
And Henry, I want to say quickly as well that, you know, one of the key moments people behind the scenes are pointing to when Amorim was starting to, he didn't lose the dressing room, like you say, players were with him, but when it was starting to get a bit tricky, and our own Chris Wheeler wrote that team talk ahead of Wolves was muddled, he kind of mumbled his way through it. Amorim was key, seen as a bit of a teacher's pet. I can understand that with the Portuguese links, but he was critical in almost not translating, but re-emphasising the points of Amorim to say, look, those players follow Bruno Fernandes, whatever he says, they do. So once you didn't have him in the dressing room for Wolves and for Newcastle, yes, they win that Newcastle game, but suddenly the messaging becomes a bit muddled. Suddenly people are confused again. And so those two games, people are pointing to saying, yeah, without Bruno next to him in the dressing room, it unravelled quite quick.
In terms of unravelling, I mean, going back to this picture here, you know, the infamous tactics board against Grimsby, did that, you know, as part of the media, did that kind of signify the beginning of the end, do you think?
I mean, there was a long way after that, so I don't think. I think if he'd have gone soon after, then yes, that would have been the defining image. Ultimately, we saw it with Wilfred Nancy in Scotland. Once people turn on a manager, you know, anything they do will be sort of comical and funny, something to poke fun at. Ultimately, he's a manager that was 2-0 down at a team. You know, players had let him down, and they end up losing on penalties. Mateus Cunha scores. That picture probably isn't even spoken about, probably not even on the board right now because they won the game. Yes, not a great result if they'd have won on penalties, but they'd have been through. It's only relevant because those players let him down on the night.
So when did it become difficult for you to defend him?
It was Grimsby, but not because he had a tactics board. That was because I was teetering on the edge, like I said, from the summer, wanted to give the benefit of the doubt. And by that point, yes, I know it was only 3 games into the new season. So you could argue, I'm kind of waiting. I'm almost like, show me something fast. It's almost like a referee in a boxing match. And they're having a look after a 10-8 round. They're having a look at the boxer. You need to show me something. You need to hit back. You need to show me you can stand up straight. Something, because I'm worried. So after the Grimsby game, for me, that was it. Even before the game, I thought, nah, I'll tell you what, this is a sackable offence if you lose this. There's no way. I know the players can, like you're saying, they need to show up, and they didn't that day. But also the other side of it is, I saw a team play exactly how we play in the Premier League as well. You know, I remember watching that game. The game should have been 3-0. They got a goal disallowed for offside, which wasn't. That should have been 3-0. And the holes that were picked in our team, which I know there's been a lot written about in the media, with specifically, you know, like we were saying, Christian Vivell didn't like that, you know, Marco Silva and Iwobi are coming out after and saying, well, we knew this about them. And very easy to play against, very predictable, to the point where a League Two side can look at it. They played a 4 at the back. They didn't say, Man United are coming to town, we need to camp out, play a 5, and we just got undone, seen through before we even got there. And for me, that was the most alarming thing. That was, for me, the point of no return. Let alone, you know, Brentford away was at that game. absolute catastrophe of a game. City away, catastrophe of a game. We get later on into the season, but Wolves are potentially going to be the worst Premier League side we've ever seen. We have the debacle of changing the system on Boxing Day against Newcastle United, probably pressure from Wilcox. We win the game, and for some reason, you change back to a back five for the worst team we've ever seen. You don't win. 10 men Everton, lost. West Ham United, probably not going to be in this division next year. Drew at home. There's so many, but he wasn't sacked for any of these things, which is actually quite weird, because it just shows that it's been a breakdown of communication and a breakdown of the relationship between the two parties, Amorim and the sporting structure at United. That is it. But for me personally, as a fan, it was Grimsby was the day I said, Ruben, thank you. I didn't say thank you. I didn't, actually. I said some other stuff. But this is not going to work. And do you know what? I really like the man. The man, the character, anytime, on pre-season tour, he was amazing. He's got time for the media. He's got time for the fans. Like, there's no judgment on the man, but, in terms of the man to take us forward as the coach, to me, it was doomed since then.
Absolutely, it definitely seemed like that. Moving on to the next bit, Roy Keane recently has come out with some pretty flamboyant comments saying that Sir Alex Ferguson is hanging around like a bit of a bad smell around the club. I want to move on now to his relationship with the club hierarchy. So we'll move on to INEOS, we'll talk about the director of football, but with regards to Sir Alex Ferguson, I want to hear from both of you on this. It's really interesting. Do you think his presence is useful or not at the club?
I think there needs to be a level of respect for what he's delivered the football club. He made Manchester United arguably this behemoth that it is now. They were a massive club anyway, but what he delivered may never be seen again anyway. That level of sustained success, year in, year out, changed the game. If you look at the likes of Ferguson and Wenger. But then if you were, say, to compare those two, one is much more detached from their club. Wenger's much more detached from Arsenal now than Ferguson. But Ferguson has every right to go to the games. He was there against Brighton. What is he doing in the director's box? Nothing. He's watching the match. Like me and Flex, he's not doing anything, is he? He's not there with his own tactics board, sort of holding it up. And there's an element of the media and fans are looking, going, oh, he's disgusted by this, or Ferguson is no longer the ambassador. Jim took that away, right? So
yeah. Can we not read between the lines though as well? It's almost like just this presence looking over the club, or do you not agree? Do you think it's healthy for him to be there?
Here's the thing, right? You sign for Manchester United Football Club, it comes with all of it. You almost sign I always say you almost sign two contracts when you sign for Man United. You sign the actual one where you get paid and your goal bonuses and this, that and the other. And then you sign another one that says you will be scrutinised until the nth term. You will be loved and adored more than anyone else. There will be pressures. The history will, like you say, will weigh down on you. The stepping onto the Old Trafford pitch and knowing what has taken place in that stadium will bear down on you. 75,000 people will shout attack, attack, attack if you're taking a bad touch and not progressing the ball properly. This is pressure. So I don't think that our greatest ever manager should be looked at and say like, oh, he's giving too much pressure to everybody else. Don't get me wrong, there has been changes made, like you're saying, Nathan, like he was taking it and ambassadorial role was taken, and that was, oh, you can't do that to Sir Alex and this, that, and then some people are like, well, hang on, no, he's got enough money in the bank, he's fine, it'll be okay, and Sir Alex was okay with it in the end. And those are sorts of, I think, looking at what the relationship looks like on reduced terms and different types of things doesn't have to be doing as much. But in terms of him just being in the stadium, coming to watch the team that he built, the club that he, had so much sustained success. What are we doing? What kind of world are we living in when we're trying to basically ban Sir Alex Ferguson?
Flex, you also have to consider that you just mentioned Roy Keane, who did not have a very good relationship with Sir Alex Ferguson. So, whereas Darren Fletcher, I think the comments were born out of the fact that Darren Fletcher called Sir Alex Ferguson for his blessing. Yeah. Now, you've got to understand that Darren Fletcher, he owes his Manchester United career, in his mind, to Sir Alex Ferguson. So I don't believe Sir Alex Ferguson would have said, don't take the job, no, there was no say in it. He just wanted to get maybe advice, and the person who's very critical of it is a pundit, is an ex-player that didn't get on with Sir Alex Ferguson.
And the word blessing as well, maybe didn't need to use that
it's not
word.
Great. It's not great
that's
optically,
like, can you give me the green light to do this? It's
thoughts
more like,
that?
because like you say, they owe everything to Sir Alex. So I'm not as a fan in a camp of, like you say, agreeing that Sir Alex has a bad smell. I couldn't even ever speak about Sir Alex in that way.
Where are you right now with INEOS as a fan?
Incompetent.
Yeah.
Incompetent. Not up to it. Learning on the job. And I think that their words don't match their actions. So I feel like I don't trust them. I feel like I don't believe in them to make the right decisions from here on out. And I think what they've done is just gone so radical a change from one which is true Man United fashion. So they've come in and said, there's a manager in Erik ten Hag who has his fingerprints over everything, vetoes on transfers, and it was very much reflected in the types of players we were buying at that time. And they've gone all the way left and then gone all the way right to say, we need a guy who we can almost try and tell what to do, who's going to work under this structure. We're going to give him the players. We're going to, Jim said this, we're going to decide how to play, and then that manager's going to do it, etc. And I don't think their CV is strong enough to be working at that level. And I think that the decisions, they've made every single big decision wrong. Now, don't get me wrong, putting in 50 million quid into Carrington is a good decision, okay? Of course it is. It's an easy decision as well. It's not like a, thank you, well done, Man United got a hydrotherapy pool. So they're supposed, Bournemouth just built a new training ground. Leicester have built a new training ground. Like, this is Manchester United, and we're given loads of praise for, revamping Carrington. Should have moved the whole site and got a whole new, the best in class thing. But well done, you did that. The transfer strategy did somewhat change. Trying to find the next young players. You look at Sekou Kone, what they're trying to do with Chido Obi. You look at the situation that's happened with Aiden Heaven, 1.5 million playing in the first team. You go, we need a bit more of that. Buying players with Premier League experience, Brian Mbeumo, Mateus Cunha. We need a bit more of that. That's as far as it goes. Erik ten Hag, massive disaster. Was umming and ahhing before the FA Cup final. We all know that. Didn't want to pull the plug. Wanted to pull the plug, but didn't. Then invested £300 million into his squad. Then sacked him anyway to pay out. Dan Ashworth. You had Sir Jim Ratcliffe campaigning, saying how, in commas, how stupid or silly, I think the word was, Newcastle United were being over this. We'll wait. We'll go to court. You're not doing that. No, Dan's best in class. In post for a few months. See you later. Disagreed with him. Then they tell Ruben Amorim, now or never. We believe in you. It's this, that. Now you've had to pay him off. So, and in the mix of that, telling fans that, well, we had to make those changes because Manchester United would go bust. We got to reduce the wage bill. We have to reduce roles in the club. Tickets to games for some of the players' families, travel to games for the players' family, FA Cup final. So what's basically happened is they've come in and said we need to make all these cutbacks to save money. And the very money they've saved and more has been used to pay for their very, very expensive mistakes. Yeah. So as a fan, I'm not having it. I think they're incompetent. And I'm very worried now that we have to entrust in them again to make the right steps.
Well, absolutely. And, the reason we're discussing all of this is, of course, because he was eventually sacked. Nathan, this wasn't really a football decision, was it?
No, and they'll dress it up like that. They were sort of privately saying that we didn't see enough evolution. We need a head coach. And they did say that we need a head coach to sit. They are important to the ecosystem. This was what it is. They're important to the ecosystem, but they will not be above the sporting director. As if to say, and the manager. That's what Wilcox came out and said, look, I can't help but interfere with the manager. That isn't going to fly. We're going to get onto who we want. That's not going to fly with the elite level managers. And look, I knew, I was sat in the room at Leeds. I knew once those comments were made, that was the pin out of the grenade. And I knew by the time I probably woke up Monday morning, it was a little bit later than that, he was gone. And I knew that he left almost of his own terms. He'd lost faith in INEOS. He'd lost faith that they were going to back him. Antoine Semenyo, for example, Ruben Amorim, Jason Wilcox have dinner with him in the summer. They don't go for him in the end. They go for Brian Mbeumo, but obviously really likes Semenyo. There's money for Semenyo this summer. You saw the comments. Yeah, we might do something that might surprise you. Might not be the position you think, which is midfield. So everyone's getting a bit giddy, or maybe you can do something. Okay, we can't get Semenyo because you're going to Man City. There's no money available. It's not. We're only going to move for summer targets, Baleba, Anderson. And he just went, well, I need players to make this work. You want European football, we're 6th, so I'm on target to deliver that. you're interfering more and more with my system. You don't believe in the system anymore. So he knew, look, the way this is going, he had a couple of snipes on Christmas Eve that people didn't really remember. You know, me and Jason are not seeing eye to eye. Then come to Leeds, he just thought, you know what, I'm quite happy to go back to Portugal, get my payoff. You know, and remember quickly as well with Bilbao, he sort of offered to walk that night.
No severance.
Money. No severance.
No severance.
So
and against Grimsby.
So I think one of the key things from here.
Done it twice.
But from here to here. Something's gone badly wrong. A lot of things have gone wrong, but specifically, I think Ruben Amorim takes the job here thinking he's the manager. But actually, by the time here, we're talking about ecosystem and a head coach. So either he was falsely sold something here, or he signed up for something that he was never going to accept. So maybe we'll never quite know exactly what happened in that very first meeting. What did Barada tell him? I'd love to know. But by the end, he had the impression that he was the manager, not the head coach, and they were selling it as a head coach the day he arrived.
Do you think he was backed financially enough during his time?
Look, they didn't score anywhere near enough goals, and he didn't want Rasmus Højlund. Højlund wanted to stay, was saying on the pre-season tour, please, you know, he walked over to journalists, please interview me. So it was like, please interview me. I want to get comments out there. I want to stay. And they were like, no, mate, you're off, and we're going to give an obligation to buy if Napoli get the Champions League, which they probably will. But then he goes and gets Šeško. He goes and gets a new goalkeeper. But it's not just the positions they got. He needed more, obviously. But it's a lot of the players he wanted he didn't get. Nuno Mendes was his first choice for wing-back. Well, best in the world, really. Ambitious, but didn't get him. Dorgu was maybe third or fourth on the list. They get him. Emi Martinez, that was the goalkeeper he wanted. No, we're getting Sen Lomans. You know, that's the decision that the club wanted. He's younger, more sort of potential to grow with the club, and Martinez is much older and very expensive. You know, there's some pushback with the club about did he want Ollie Watkins? That's obviously been written quite. But the club would push back on that. No, he was on board with Šeško. He did want Cunha. He did want Mbumo. But you know, there were so many holes to fit that. With his system, everything needed to be perfect. And if it wasn't, you could get beat by Grimsby or you could get beat by Arsenal. It didn't really matter. If it wasn't perfect, which it never really was, it was sort of destined to fail.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, the only wing back, am I right in saying, that they signed during this time was Patrick Dorgu.
Yeah.
And when it's a system now, and you're moving forward, how do you see the squad kind of fitting in around this? They just don't really have a squad that is a mishmash.
It's absolutely that. And now you don't really know how they've managed to arrive here, building the squad the way they have. Now it looks like you've sold all the wingers. And now you want to go back to playing wingers, and now you've got your stockpiling tens. We've seen what Mason Mount's put up on the right-hand side in the most recent game at the time of recording against Brighton. Struggled on the right-hand side massively. Cunha doesn't look great coming off the left. Doesn't want to be there. He wants to be central. Bruno Fernandes wants to be central. When Mbumo and Ahmad are back into the team, which they need to be, one of those has got to play on the left-hand side of a three, which if they're adaptable, fine, but their best work is coming in on their left foot from the right wing position. So the squad's not fit for purpose for a 4-3-3 or a 3-4-3 because essentially the quality isn't there. They might be more comfortable in a 4-2-3-1, 4-3-3, but it's still going to need the level of investment. And this is where you go back to INEOS of how have you arrived here? How have you arrived at a situation where you're going to back a manager who is a stubborn character, will stick to his principles and play 3-4-3 the whole way through, then start unravelling that and say, no, we want to go back to a 4, the Man United way, the Man United DNA. Again, that's not going to fill fans with any sort of...
Comes back to this, though. Comes back to the mentality. It doesn't matter who you recruit. They're going to go out and spend millions and millions and millions on a midfielder. Few midfielders, probably. Yeah. Casemiro's at the end of his contract. You know, likes of Toby Colley, I would expect to move. They didn't really replace Eriksson. Ugarte, I expect to go to Turkey. You know, Kobbie Mainoo, I expect him to stay now, but you just never know. He was very eager to go. So it's going to come down to this. What characters are you signing? And even if you sign him and you think, say, Elliot Anderson, top target, you know, he wanted by Man City, all these top clubs, great player, he'll be starting for England at the World Cup. I've no doubt his mentality, right? Yeah. But when you come to Man United, I don't doubt the mentality of the players when they arrive. It's once they pull the shirt on, you can't see it. It looks problematic. So that's where I think, you know, the flaws in the INEOS plan, which I don't think there is one. I think they're kind of making it up as they go along, and I've written that, and I'm sure they're delighted to read that. Yeah, there is no sort of, right, we're going to play this system, we've got this game model, we're going to recruit for this, regardless of the head coach. Head coach is now just a coach. Yeah. There's none of that. And there was none of that really. Maybe they had it here, But by there, I mean, there's just no
breakdown.
semblance of what the actual plan is, you know.
Michael Carrick has beaten Ole Gunnar Solskjaer to be the new interim manager, the interim, I guess.
Yeah.
How does that sound to you?
Listen, I've got a big love and affinity for Michael Carrick, big respect for what he's achieved at the club, and I really like what he's been doing as a coach. You know, at Middlesbrough, he started off really well, got a new contract, you know, then missed out on the playoffs in the last season that he was there, and they decided to go their separate ways. He's a good, young, aspiring coach. I've got no problem with Michael Carrick, the individual.
Sure.
But as a fan, it's rinse and repeat. You can't ask fans to get excited. You can't ask fans to really get behind that, and you certainly can't ask or think that Man United fans will or should have faith in INEOS to make the right decision by Carrick. Like, if he does well to the end of the season and gets Champions League, might get the job permanently. And for me, we'll be in another situation with Ollie. I hope I'm wrong. You know, I really do. I hope Michael Carrick comes in as the next Alex Ferguson. But I don't think that's going to happen. Or Michael Carrick comes in, nothing happens, and we just whimper with the one game a week we've got to the rest of the season. Don't get Europe, he goes. And then, again, trust INEOS to go and get this permanent manager. That's probably not going to want to work under these pretenses. So Carrick coming in, I'm obviously, as a fan, I'm going to be at the game supporting the team. I'm hoping for that Ollie bounce. We really need it. If we can go on that 17 game, now is the time, because we really do need European football. You know, Europa League at the least, Conference League at the least. I'd even take that. But we need to be in Europe. But Michael Carrick, I think the players will respect him. You know, he won't come in and go against what Man United stands for. That's the easy bit. INEOS, that's why INEOS are looking at ex-players coming into the end of the season, because they can say, listen, back to a 4, get us on the front foot, get some smiles on faces, and try and make everyone feel good again.
Okay, gents, we've now spoken about what has gone wrong at Manchester United, but let's look forward and see how they can get out of this mess that they're currently in. Nathan, I'm going to start with you. I'm going to turn that card over and I want you to tell me which manager we're going to see on the other side and why.
Luis Enrique. He is the most elite manager in the world. It's a very short list of elite managers. I think he is the best in class. So if that's your slogan for this project, and look, he's worked under Luis Campos. He understands the head coach model, but he's very much a manager. The way he carries himself, been at Barcelona, he's won big trophies. So you need to walk into that dressing room and people believe that you're gonna get us there. You know, and I think Luis Enrique arrives at Man United and suddenly everyone believes again that United have the best manager, and they haven't had that for a while.
Flex, do us a favour, what's your pitch?
Yep, I've gone with the same manager in terms of Luis Enrique. It is a little bit of a pipe dream, because I just think that under this certain model, I'm just not sure the elite want to come here after they're seeing how the club's run. But I agree with Nathan, if you're serious about getting the best in class, it needs to be one of the big dogs. I'll be equally happy with Thomas Tuchel as well. I think he would be fine. Someone who can handle that pressure, somebody who understands, the United way DNA. That's one thing. United DNA is winning. That's what it is. Forget style, and so it's principles, understanding how to work the media. Don't offer up lines that you maybe shouldn't say. Be strong against the ownership as well, and know what you want and want what you say. So I would definitely look for a manager of this ilk. However, if I'm being realistic, that's the dream. I almost 99% sure that we'll get to the summer and we won't have an elite manager like Tuchel or Luis Enrique. I think it's likely to be some of the guys that are ending up being free by the end of the year, because we've spent so much money in payouts. You're looking at Iriola, you're looking at maybe a Glasner. Okay, you want to wait till after the World Cup. Pochettino could become available. Nagelsmann could become available. But I'm not sold that we're going to get this guy at all. But the dream would 100% be Luis Enrique.
Definitely. Well, Nathan, Flex, thank you so much for joining us here. United fans, in the comments, let us know what's your pitch. We'll be back next time when we take a look at another club in our spotlight. If you like this show and you're a fan of boxing, don't forget to check out The Hook over on Daily Mail Sport Boxing.